There is nowhere in the world where this kind of ambivalent, jurisprudentially unsettling, legally paradoxical constitution operates.
Now, let me ask you, Prince of the Niger Delta.
Yeah.
There's this ongoing constitutional review by the National Assembly.
Yeah.
In fact, it's far gone. It's about in the concluding stage. What's your take on it? Do you agree with what's going on? Do you think that they're doing a good job? Or are there other alternatives that we could possibly engage?
The Constitution of Nigeria is being amended again.
Right.
And I think that if the constitutional amendment process in this country does not take into cognizance the obvious foundational malady of this constitution, if it doesn't take into cognizance the foundational error of this constitution, whatever they are doing in terms of amendment is a Sisyphean quest. Really? For me, it is postponing the doomsday, because it is definitely going to bring us back to where we have to look at the constitution again and again.
You do not have any faith in what's being done right now?
I think that what we need in this country is not a constitutional amendment. If we allow ourselves to be influenced by political-minded people, you look at this country, where this country is a product of bad politics, where this country is a product of bad accountability in terms of political leadership. And if we allow such people to determine the future of our, we will still be where we are. There are core areas of fundamental deficiencies in this constitution, but this constitution is conceptually incompatible. This constitution is normatively contradictory. This constitution is structurally incoherent. Our constitution is the most ambivalent secular document in the history of constitutions in the world. I do not know of any constitution in the world where a secular constitution has provision for religious laws. For example, Section 10 of Nigerian Constitution, I think I need to just refer to it. Section 10 says that the government of the federation or of a state shall not adopt any religion as a state religion. That's Section 10. Now, Section 38 of the same constitution states that every person is entitled to the freedom of conscience, the freedom of thought, and the freedom of religion. Now, these two sections in the Constitution establishes the doctrine of secularism. And that means a secular state is a state where religion is not a part of state operation. And what is secularism? Secularism is the principle that government and public institutions should be separate from religion. And Section 275 of the same Constitution makes provision for Sharia law. That is a doctrinal ambivalence. That is a legal antipathy. Paradoxical for any constitution to have such an ambivalence. It is jurisprudentially unsettling for any constitution to have both provision for secularism and provision for religious law. And that is the bane of this constitution. And that, because this constitution was bequeathed to us by the military, there was no constitutional
Now let's
assembly.
go quickly. If you say that you don't quite agree with the amendment and that it's foundationally flawed, and that all what is needed is an entire, because that's what you're saying.
Yes.
We need an entirely new constitution. Is that what you're saying?
What we need is to discard this constitutional document.
Entirely.
The politicians, as we speak right now, do not have the pedigree to have the selflessness of heart to deal with issues that has to do with the fundamental flaw of this constitution.
So how do we go about that?
No, call a national conference. Call a constitutional conference. Now, if we are to call a constitutional conference, you're going to involve ethnic nationalities, you're going to involve civil society, you're going to involve the religious bodies. It's not a politically orchestrated kind of activity, and that's the beginning of and it is not new.
How is that different from what Jonathan tried to do just shortly before?
What Jonathan tried to do is actually one of the beginning of breakthrough for this country. But it was relegated. It was disregarded. The 2014 Constitutional Conference recommended sweeping transformation.
So why don't we just go back to those recommendations of that 2014
exactly. The political will to enforce the 2014 Constitutional Conference is not there. That's why it was disregarded. And our constitutional history has shown that major times of our constitution, we have had to go through this kind of constitutional reawakening. In In 1922, we had the Clifford Constitution. 1946, we had the Richardson Constitution. In 1951, we had the McPherson Constitution. 1954, we had the Lyttelton Constitution. All these things about regionalism, federalism was introduced by those constitutions. In 1979, we had the Presidential Constitution, where the presidential system of government was introduced. In 1999, we had one of the most fraudulent constitutional documents that we have today. And for us to, if we have up to, now, the 2014 Constitutional Conference prescribes 600 amendments. And right now I'm thinking they're having about 60 amendments to the Constitution. Amendment will not stop. Amendment will not die. It will continue to be a vicious circle. It is going to be a major issue of our development.
Two things quickly.
Yeah.
Two things quickly. Is it not a problem of political will? We have had this talk over and over again that we have sufficient laws, we have sufficient policies, but we have a problem with implementing policy. That's one. What about the cost that this will bring about?
The cost cannot be compared to the benefit that it will accrue to the people. The reason is our fundamental flaw in this constitution is going to be the beginning of, you see, 12 states in this country operates by Sharia law. That is polarism, that is ambivalence, that is legal antipathy. It is something that is not tenable. There is nowhere in the world where this kind of ambivalent, jurisprudentially unsettling, legally paradoxical constitution operates. And that is why our major issues in this country, why we have not been able to achieve the level of growth we are expecting in this country, because of these key issues. Religion is one of the major problems of Nigeria, and religion, the religious antipathy in this country is instituted by the Constitution, and if that is not killed, we are going to go.
So as we close, I'm saying, what about the political will to implement whatever document comes out? If we have had issues implementing previous ones, what is the sudden Midas touch? What is the sudden magic that will come into play that will ensure that what comes out now is enforced?
Well, I am taking us back to the basics. If we refuse to implement the 2014 Constitutional Conference, then we must craft or draft a new constitution.
All right.
Because continuing to amend this constitution is like having a house with the wrong foundation. No matter how you amend a house with the wrong foundation, you postpone the doomsday by amending such a house. And that structure is the reality of what we have.
Nigeria has a history of failed, flawed, disputed elections. And here we are in 2026. 2027 elections are just around the corner, barely about a year from now. Do you think that the forthcoming elections will be different, will be any different? Are there any hopes, any signals to that effect?
Thank you so much. So long as the template of political structure, so long as the organs that operate political activities in this country operate within the same template, within the same law, within the same prescription, there's not going to be any difference. The INEC, which is the Independent National Electoral Commission, must be insulated from political influence. And in fact, that's why I talked about constitutional rejigging, because INEC is the key agency that determines free and fair election. If we do not have free and fair election, then there can't be any trust in our electionary process.
True.
INEC leader, I think we need to revert to the Wire's report on political reform. And that report is one of the most authoritative documents. It says that the INEC chairman cannot be appointed by the executive or the president. It's just like Chelsea, two football clubs, Chelsea and then one of the coaches appointing the referee. It is a misnomer. First of all, Wire's report should be implemented. INEC should not have the executive electing or appointing the INEC chairman. Number two, the funding of INEC. One of the proposals of the Wire's report is that the funding of INEC should not emanate as a prerequisite, as a prerogative of the executive. Of the executive.
It should be like
now what they recommend is that
right direct from the
what they recommend is that
account,
what they recommend is that INEC funding should be a first line charge of the consolidated revenue fund. What the revenue fund is the warehouse where all the revenues of government are. When you say first charge from that means before any other, it will direct. And so the executive will not have any kind of influence over what happens. And then number three, the Wire's report, recommended independent candidacy to save us from the oligarch of political shenanigans. And in fact, most of these recommendations were not regarded. And if INEC is not independent, there cannot be free and fair election in this country.
Wow. That's it from Asu Ekiye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.